You reach up to the top shelf for that heavy pot, your shoulder pulls tight, and for just a second your heels lift off the floor. You feel the little wobble. I felt it too. That wobble is where my whole investigation began. Here is what I found, and I will say it plainly. The way your home is arranged right now is quietly draining your strength, your money, and your safety, and it was never designed for a body like yours or mine. The night I nearly went down reaching for a soup pot, something stopped adding up and I could not let it go. So I went digging, and the answer had been sitting quietly in a forgotten kitchen study from 1929, waiting for someone to open it back up. No new gadgets, no contractor, just the home and the body you already have. Stay with me, because the trail runs somewhere you would never expect. Let me take you back to that evening, because it matters. It was a Tuesday in early spring, and I was making a pot of vegetable soup, same as I had 1,000 times. The big enamel pot lives on the top shelf of my kitchen cabinet, the one mounted well above my head. I stretched up on my toes, wrapped my fingers around the handle, and as I pulled it toward me, the weight shifted, my balance tipped backward, and my heels came clean off the linoleum. I caught the counter. I was fine, but I stood there with my heart pounding, and one thought would not leave me. Why on earth is the heaviest thing in my kitchen stored in the most dangerous place I can reach? I had lived in that house for over 20 years. I had put that pot up there myself, and it had never once occurred to me to ask who decided a kitchen should be built this way, and whether they were thinking about me at all when they did. That question is small, but small questions, when you refuse to let them go, have a way of opening very large doors. The next morning I started paying attention, really paying attention, to how my body felt after ordinary tasks. And what I noticed unsettled me. I was tired after cooking. Not tired the way you get from a long walk, but a specific, achy, worn-down kind of tired, in my lower back, my shoulders, my knees. I was bending down to the very bottom cabinet for my mixing bowls. I was reaching over my head for the everyday plates. I was making trip after trip across the kitchen for things that could have lived side by side. I started counting my steps for a single breakfast, fumbling for the coffee, the filters, the mug, the bread, the butter, the plate, the pan. 62 steps for breakfast. In a kitchen the size of a small bedroom, and that was the moment the hunch turned into a case. Because 62 steps is not a kitchen problem. 62 steps is a design problem. Somebody, somewhere, decided where things go, and I had been obediently following their blueprint for 2 decades without ever asking if it served me. Here is the first clue I turned up, and it stopped me cold. Reaching above your shoulders does something to your body that has nothing to do with your arms. When you lift your hands over your head, your center of gravity rises and shifts backward. Your inner ear, the little balance system behind your eardrum, has to scramble to keep you upright. In a younger body, that correction happens in an instant. In a body over 65, that correction is slower, and the margin for error is thinner. Now put a heavy pot at the end of that reach. You are not just lifting weight. You are lifting weight while your balance is already compromised. And I found the number that made my stomach drop. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 1 in 4 adults over the age of 65 falls every single year. Falls are the leading cause of injury death in our age group. And a large share of those falls happen at home, doing something ordinary, something the person had done safely 1,000 times before. I had assumed falls came from icy sidewalks and loose rugs. I never once thought the danger was built into my kitchen cabinets. But there it was. The top shelf, the very place I stored my heaviest and most used items, was practically engineered to tip me over. So I asked the obvious next question. If reaching high is this risky, and bending low is this hard on the back and knees, why is the modern kitchen built almost entirely out of shelves that are either too high or too low? Who set these heights? And why does nobody living in one of these homes seem to know? That question is where the trail turned dark, and where I finally met the people who benefited from my not knowing. Because here is what I learned about those cabinet heights. They are not an accident, and they are not a law of nature. Somewhere in the middle of the last century, as houses started going up by the thousands after the war, the building trades needed standard measurements. Standard sizes are cheaper. You cut every cabinet the same, you hang every counter at the same height, you train every installer to do it the same way, and you save a fortune. So the standard was set, a base counter at about 36 inches high, wall cabinets mounted around 18 inches above the counter, the top shelf floating somewhere near 72 inches off the floor, 6 full feet up. And who was that measurement built around? An average. An average that leaned toward a healthy adult in the prime of life, standing straight, with good balance and a strong back, not a 70-year-old with a stiff shoulder, not a woman of 5'2", not anyone who had ever felt their heels leave the floor reaching for a pot. And here is the part that made me genuinely angry. Once those heights became standard, an entire industry grew up around the problems they created. Can't reach the top shelf? Buy a step stool. Can't see the back of the deep cabinet? Buy pull-out organizers, lazy Susans, tiered racks, drawer dividers, the whole glittering aisle of storage products they sell you at the home store. Every one of those gadgets exists to solve a problem the design created in the first place. Nobody makes money telling you to store less in smarter places using the space you already own. There is no profit in that. The profit is in convincing you that your struggle is a shopping problem, one more thing to buy, one more thing to install, one more $40 plastic contraption that ends up making the cabinet even more crowded. I had spent years and real money doing exactly that. And I was still reaching over my head for a pot that could have hurt me. So I stopped shopping and started reading. If the modern kitchen was built wrong for me, I wanted to know if anyone had ever built one right. Someone must have studied this. Someone must have measured what a real human body actually needs. And that is when the investigation led me somewhere I never expected, back nearly 100 years, to a woman most people have never heard of. Her name was Lillian Gilbreth. And if that name rings a faint bell, it might be because her big, busy family was the one written about in an old book and film called Cheaper by the Dozen. But that was the least interesting thing about her. Lillian Gilbreth had a doctorate. She was one of the first true industrial engineers in America, a person whose entire profession was studying how human beings move through their work and how to remove wasted motion so the worker ends the day less exhausted. And in 1929, she turned that scientific eye on the one workplace nobody had bothered to study seriously, the kitchen. Working for the Brooklyn Borough Gas Company, she designed something she called the Kitchen Practical. And she did not decorate it, she measured it. She followed people through the actual steps of cooking a meal, and she counted every single motion, every reach, every bend, every trip across the floor, the way a stopwatch engineer would study a factory line. What she found was staggering. In an ordinary kitchen of the day, a common task like making a strawberry shortcake took a woman around 280 separate motions. 280. Reaching, walking, bending, setting down, turning around, walking back. After Gilbreth redesigned the layout, placing tools and ingredients where the hands would actually need them, that same shortcake took closer to 90 motions. She cut the work by roughly 2/3. Not by making the woman faster, not by making her stronger, simply by putting things in the right place. I read that number, and I thought about my 62 steps for breakfast. I was living inside the old kitchen, the 280 motion kitchen. The one Lillian Gilbreth had already proven back when my own mother was a girl was wearing people out for no reason at all. But one study from 1929 could have been a fluke. I needed to know if anyone had confirmed it, tested it, turned it into rules a person could actually follow, and they had. That is where the trail led next, to a quiet research council in the Midwest that spent years measuring exactly where a human being should store the things they use. At the University of Illinois, there was a group called the Small Homes Council, formed in 1944, right as those mass-produced houses were about to spread across the whole country. These were researchers, architects, and engineers, and they set out to answer the ordinary questions no builder was asking. How high should a shelf be? How deep should a cabinet go before things vanish into the back? Where should you store the thing you reach for 20 times a day versus the thing you touch twice a year? They studied it for years. They measured reach. They measured strain. They measured how far things drifted out of sight in a deep shelf. And out of their work, and the work of the engineers who came after them, came a principle so simple and so powerful that once you hear it, you cannot unsee your own kitchen. They found there is a band of space, roughly between your hip and your shoulder, where your body can reach without bending, without stretching, without tipping your balance, and without straining a single joint. In the world of ergonomics, they later gave it a name: the golden zone. Some call it the strike zone. It is the space between about knee height at the very lowest and shoulder height at the very top, and the true sweet spot is the narrower band from your hip to your chest. Inside that band, your body is safe and strong. Above it, you tip backward and risk a fall. Below it, you load your spine and your knees. And the entire principle, the one thing that fixes almost everything, is this: whatever you use the most should live in the golden zone. Whatever you rarely use gets banished to the high shelves and the deep corners. If this investigation is already changing the way you see your kitchen, I have gone much deeper into all of it in my book Start Smart, is where I lay out the first practical steps. Deeper Roots traces the full history of how this knowledge got buried, and the complete system brings everything together into a room-by-room guide you can work through at your own pace. You can find all three through the link in the description below. Now, back to where the trail led next, because stopping the shopping was only the beginning. I stood in my kitchen and looked at it with new eyes. My everyday coffee mugs were up high. My heavy pots were up higher. My daily mixing bowls were down at floor level. And my golden zone, that safe, strong band right in front of me, was full of things I touched maybe twice a year: a fondue set, a novelty platter, a stack of margarine tubs I was somehow saving. I had it exactly backwards. And so, I would bet, do you? Now, before I show you how I fixed it, I need to talk directly to some of you, because I can already hear the worry. Maybe you are thinking, that is fine for someone with a strong back and money for new shelves, but my hands don't grip like they used to, or I can't be hauling heavy pots around, or I live in a small apartment on a fixed income, and I cannot change a thing about these cabinets. I hear you, and I want you to know this next part was built for you especially. This costs nothing, and it asks almost nothing of your body. Here is the beautiful truth I found. Fixing your kitchen the Gilbreth way is not about buying anything or building anything. It is about moving things you already own from a bad spot to a good spot, and you can do the whole thing sitting in a chair, one shelf at a time, over as many afternoons as you like. Start with one rule and one rule only. For the next week, keep a little notebook on the counter, and every time you reach for something, make a tiny mark next to it. At the end of the week, you will know, with your own eyes, the 10 or 12 things you actually use every day. The coffee, the one good knife, the everyday plates, the skillet you always grab. That is your real kitchen. Everything else is storage. Then, on an afternoon when you feel steady, and with a family member or neighbor nearby, if reaching is hard for you, you move only those 10 or 12 daily items into the golden zone, that band between your hip and your chest. Nothing else has to move today. Just those. And here is the trick for weak hands and tired shoulders. Do not lift the heavy things up. Bring them down. Move that heavy pot off the dangerous top shelf and into a low, easy spot near your hip, or even into the oven drawer at the bottom where it can simply slide out, no lifting at all. The whole point is that you should never again have to lift weight above your shoulders or bend to the floor for anything you use daily. If you cannot reach it, standing flat on both feet, with your elbows comfortable at your sides, it does not belong there. It is that simple, and it is that free. And there is a second version of this for those of you with very limited mobility who maybe use a walker or who tire quickly and cook from a seated position. Gilbreth had an answer for you too, almost 100 years ago, and it was her favorite idea of all. She called it storing things at the point of first use. It means this: the thing you need for a task should live exactly where you first use it, not across the room. Coffee, filters, mug, and spoon should all live together in one spot, right by the coffee maker, at arm's reach, so making your morning cup takes one turn of the body instead of 6 trips across the floor. The cutting board and your good knife should hang together right where you chop. The salt and pepper and cooking oil should sit beside the stove, not in a cabinet you have to walk to. You group your kitchen not by what things are, but by what you do. All the coffee things together, all the sandwich things together, all the tea things together. When I did this, my 62 steps for breakfast dropped to 11. 11 steps. I counted them twice because I did not believe it. And I promise you, if you are cooking from a chair or leaning on a walker, that difference is not a small convenience. It is the difference between making yourself a proper hot meal and giving up and eating cold cereal because the whole ordeal is just too much. That, right there, is the quiet cost nobody adds up. When your kitchen exhausts you, you stop cooking. When you stop cooking, you eat worse. You spend more on convenience food and your health slips, one skipped meal at a time. The bad layout does not just tire you, it slowly shrinks your independence. And it does it so gradually, you never blame the shelves. But I told you the trail led somewhere you would never expect, and I have been holding the best piece for the end. Because everything I have shown you so far, the golden zone, the point of first use, cutting the steps, is powerful, but it was still missing one thing. It answered where to put things. It did not fully answer why the good design got buried so completely that a woman proved it in 1929 and I had never heard a word of it. And when I found that final answer, the whole case snapped shut. Here it is. When I dug deeper into the University of Illinois Small Homes Council papers and into what happened to Lillian Gilbreth's kitchen research after the war, I found the thing that had been staring at me the whole time. The knowledge was never lost by accident. It was replaced on purpose by a different idea that made a great deal more money. In the boom years after the war, the kitchen stopped being sold as a workspace and started being sold as a showroom. The measure of a good kitchen was no longer how few steps it took to cook a meal. It was how many cabinets you had. More cabinets meant a more expensive, more impressive kitchen. And more cabinets, mounted higher and deeper to fit them all in, meant more storage that sat outside the golden zone entirely, up where you tip and down where you strain. The efficiency research, the human research, the Gilbreth work that measured the actual body was quietly pushed aside. Not because it was wrong, because it did not sell cabinets. And so, for 3 generations, we have been handed kitchens designed to look full rather than to work, and then sold a whole aisle of gadgets to cope with the mess that design created. The record was there the entire time. Lillian Gilbreth published her Kitchen Practical in 1929. The Small Homes Council published their storage research through the 1950s. It was never secret. It was just buried under a shinier, more profitable idea, until almost nobody alive remembered that someone had already figured out the right way to build a kitchen around a real human being. Somebody kept that knowledge alive, tucked away in university archives and old engineering papers. I dug it out. And now you have it, sitting in your hands, ready to use this very weekend in the exact kitchen you already own. So here is what I did with it, and what I want you to try. I picked one weekend. On Saturday I did the notebook, tracking what I truly used. On Sunday I moved only my daily items into the golden zone, brought the heavy pot down low, and grouped everything by the task instead of by the thing. It took one afternoon and cost me nothing but a little time and a willing pair of hands to help with the high shelves. The change was not subtle. My back stopped aching after supper. I stopped making trip after trip. I have not once felt my heels leave the floor since, because there is no longer any reason for me to reach over my head. The dangerous pot lives at my hip now, and I slide it out like a drawer. And it does not stop at the kitchen. Once you understand the golden zone, you see it everywhere. The clothes you wear every week should hang in the easy middle of the closet, not folded on the high shelf or crumpled in the low drawer. The medicines you take daily should sit at chest height, not on the top of the cabinet where you cannot even read the label. The tools in the garage, the towels in the bathroom, the good dishes you actually use, everything you touch often comes into the safe band between hip and shoulder. Everything you rarely touch goes high or goes low. That single rule, applied all through your home, quietly removes 100 small risks and 100 small strains you had simply learned to live with. That is the whole secret, not 30 gadgets. One principle proven almost a century ago, that turns the home you already have into one that finally works for the body you actually live in. Here is what I want you to sit with tonight. You did not imagine the strain. You were not getting weak or clumsy or old before your time. You were living inside a design that was never built for you, and then being sold the cure for a problem the design created. And the fix was never something to buy. It was something to remember. You just took it back. I think you are exactly the kind of person who takes it back. The kind who feels a wobble on the top shelf and, instead of just being more careful, stops and asks who built this and why. The kind who trusts their own two eyes over a showroom. That stubborn streak is not a flaw. It is the very thing that keeps you sharp and standing on your own 2 feet in your own home, which is precisely where you belong. Now, I want to hear from you. And I mean this specifically. Go stand in your kitchen and look at your top shelf, the highest one, the one you strain to reach. Tell me in the comments what heavy or dangerous thing you found living up there, the thing you are going to bring down this weekend. Is it a cast iron pan? A stand mixer? A stack of heavy bowls? Write it down below and tell me where in the world you are watching from, because I read these and I want to know how far this old buried record has traveled. And if you are ready to keep pulling these threads with me, come along. This is a growing circle of people quietly taking back the practical knowledge that got buried under everything they tried to sell us. Because the kitchen was only the beginning. The very same people who decided where your cabinets go also decided how your whole home is lit. And I have found an old record that says the lighting in most senior homes is doing something to your balance and your sleep that nobody warned you about. That is the next case I am opening. I hope you will be there when I do. Before you go, one more thing. Inside the Wise Living Circle, I pick up right where we stopped, walking you through the full room-by-room reach map. And in there you can ask me your own question, and a real person, me, answers you myself. You wouldn't be doing this alone. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen. And you can cancel anytime with one click, no risk.